You're listening to the Custom Built Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to discuss what to do if your renovation runs into major issues. So stay tuned. So this one is good for all renovations as homeowners, but I think this is more on the perspective. Well, I don't think, I know this is a perspective from a person that's running the job. So as a project manager or a contractor, this is what do we do when we run into these issues? A homeowner, if you're a homeowner and you're doing a renovation and you're in the middle of it, you're essentially the project manager here, this is also for you. But also take it as another perspective on what to do when something not ideal happens. So for example, we'll just run right into it. Most recent project I had, we were right on time, going great, discussed grout colors. We knew the plan. We were going with a brown tile with a brown grout. It's a kitchen floor, so we thought darker, better, hide stains, right? So I'm there. They're laying the tile. Great. I not able to make it the following day, but I go the next day, and I walk in, and there's white grout installed. And so I call our contractors to figure out what's happening, and long story short, the materials that were picked up were the wrong materials. However, they had the selections, they had the order information. So, and to the items that were for the grout didn't match up color wise. So at this point, I ask, when do you stop and ask a question before you install a white grout after we had all the discussions of a brown grout? And, there was some back and forth about it. But the main thing is, when you run into an issue, something like this, what do you do, right? You can't freak out. Bottom line, you could freak out privately, like, oh no, this isn't good. But freaking out on the trade will never go well. I'm not saying don't be mad. I'm not saying don't let them know you're upset about the outcome of what's happening and the process and the lack of communication. But freaking out and yelling at somebody is never going to be a good answer. So I suggest having a conversation, finding out all the information that you can around the situation so you can assess and make a good conscious decision and move forward, because ultimately you have to fix this, right? If you want to stay on track. This job was scheduled, so this is a Wednesday, I find it. This job was scheduled to be done the following Monday. So not a lot of time. I give them an opportunity to fix this issue. The solution that they provided was to scrape out the grout and go back and use the correct color. And originally they said they were going to just scrape a layer off and go over the top with the new grout. And you cannot do that. You can't go over old grout with new grout. It won't stick. It's going to chip out. We have warranties, right? And not just because it's a warranty, it's just not the right way to do it. It's not good craftsmanship. So I call them back and say, no, you really need to either need to pull out all the grout or you need to demo the tile and redo it. And they said, no, we're going to take out the grout. That's what I meant. I'm going to take out the grout. We're going to redo it. So I said, okay. I show up the next day. Well, no, I'll back up. I sent back that afternoon. One of the guys is just scraping. He's literally just getting that top layer off. So I text him. I call him. I said, this isn't looking so great. I don't think we're going to be right on time with this. So we need to discuss this. I come back on Thursday and they just scraped that top layer off and put in the brown grout. That's an issue. So I call them. I say, we cannot do this. This is a big issue. We need to do something else. So I give them a little bit of time to come up, to give me the right answer. But in the meantime, I am calling other contractors because I no longer have trust that this is going to be done correctly. So I line up another trade, but I want to give these guys another chance because one, it's a timeline issue. We only have until Monday. It's Thursday. We got to get this done. Two, I'm going to hope that by talking, so I was working with a lead of this team. So by talking to the owner, I thought maybe we can get to a better solution, but I did not. Their solution was scrape the grout. I said, this is not going to be okay. This is a 2-day job now. We need to pull out the tile. We need to redo it because you can do that in a lot less time than doing the grout. And, we went back and forth a little bit, but ultimately at the end, we said, this isn't going to work. We need to part ways for this. And I had to get in another crew. So the moral of the story is don't hold on to a crew if you don't have to. I mean, I allowed them to kind of just bring us to that conclusion, even though my mind was set. As soon as he said he was going to pull the grout, I was like, no, we're not going to be on the same page with this. I don't trust that this process is going to work. We need to pull it out. So they were able to say, I'm going to pull out. I said, okay, great. That's good. So I had another crew meet me 7 a.m. the next day. We already got the grout in. We're on track. Like, we're going to be all right for Monday. But ultimately, it's so important to give these guys a chance to fix something and hope that they do it the right way. My approach is to let them come up with a solution if it's accurate, if it's a good way to do it. If they're telling me they're going to scrape the layer off and then put new, that's never going to be an okay fix. But if they were going to actually pull out the grout and do it the correct way, I'm going to give them the opportunity to do it the right way because this is their work. I'm not doing the work, you are. So if that's the way you want to go, I'm not going to tell you how to do your process. But it needs to be done correctly. It needs to be done with good craftsmanship. And we need to be able to support the work that we do. And if you're not going to do this, we can't move forward with this job. And at this point, it's okay to fire and hire a new trade. And I find this to be something that people feel like they get stuck. They feel like they are no longer capable. They have no power in this to say, I am this far into a job and we are on a timeline. And if I want to stay on this timeline, I need to stick with these people who have started this work because now they're familiar with it and I don't have time to go and hire somebody else. And I know this could feel that way, but it doesn't have to be. It's important to realize that if you are going to focus on your timeline more than you're going to focus on your craftsmanship, you're not going to have the outcome you want. So, timing is important, but your craftsmanship is more important. And if the trade that you're hired messes up, because we all mess up, we're all human, it's okay. But if they mess up and they don't fix it, and they don't fix it accurately, then you need to move on because they're going to continue the same things and you're going to run into this issue over and over again. And if they're not willing to take the time and do it correctly, they're not going to take the time to make sure that the rest of your project's going to be done well. And so you just need to make that choice, right? Because if you choose timing over craftsmanship, you're going to be frustrated in the next few months because you're going to find that the craftsmanship wasn't holding up and things are chipping or things are coming apart or now there's nail holes coming or nail heads popping in your sheetrock because you didn't go and take the time to make sure that these were things that were already taken care of prior to signing off on the job. So it's important to just make sure that craftsmanship stays a priority if you value craftsmanship and you don't want to be back and fixing something that you had to do in this project. So, for example, if I continue to let this trade do the way or fix the grout the way that they did by just putting a new layer on top, I would be getting phone calls from the homeowner in a month, 2 months, a year because their grout is starting to chip and it's coming up. And then we're going to have to fix it all again. And you know what that's going to look like? We're going to be pulling out the grout. We're going to either be pulling the grout out or pulling out the tile, and we're going to be redoing it. So that means we're going to have to pull off all the trim base from their kitchen. We're going to have to pull out their stove, their refrigerator. We're going to have to plastic their whole kitchen, and they're not going to be able to use it for a couple of days because we have to redo it. And so now, if we went down that route, that would have been more frustrating for the homeowner. We lost trust in the homeowner as far as our quality goes. And then what, right? So it's better to nip it in the bud before you get to a warranty issue down the line and you're redoing it anyway. So do it right the first time and you'll be okay. Also, you have the power to hire a new trade and not stay with somebody who's not going to honor and take pride in their craftsmanship, because ultimately that's what it comes down to, right? Like if you're doing crappy work because you're rushing, you don't care about the craftsmanship and you don't have pride in your trade. Do you want somebody working on your home like that? I personally wouldn't. It's one thing if I'm doing the work and I'm like, it's not my best, but I'm also living in it and I'm okay with it. That's one thing. But if I am being hired to do somebody else's home, I better see the A team on this team and on this job, and they better be doing their best, and the craftsmanship better be on point because it's not going to go well if it's not done properly. So let me throw a couple more examples back at you just to show you, how we handle different things. So floor grout, you got to take it up. There's really not a better solution. Even if you were to scrape out all the grout, I mean, if you don't get it all, it'll chip. It's just not really a good solution. But again, I was giving them the benefit of the doubt there. But I've had other examples. So one of my first jobs I've ever done, I was trying out a new trade. And so, as the guinea pig, I had a pretty tight schedule. But again, when I go over these jobs with the trades, I like to make sure that the schedule makes sense. So, I'll create a schedule. Drywall, especially for the job we were doing, which was a garage, should have only taken a week. And that's being generous. That's hanging, mudding, sanding, priming, getting it ready for paint. Actually, you probably could have painted it in a week for the size of the garage was, but again, I'm being generous. It gives us some wiggle room if it's. I live in a very humid climate, so sometimes the mud doesn't want to dry super fast, and in a garage is not climate control typically. So giving a little bit of extra wiggle room, car breaks down, whatever, it's nice to have. So I present this when I walk this through with the trade. Hey, this should take about a week. What do you think? Do you agree with that? No, you need a little bit more time. Okay, what are we talking, right? It's a conversation, and it's an open conversation. But after a little while, you should have an idea of what these jobs should look like as far as what the time looks like, especially if they have a large crew. So we have this job. We sign off on it. We know we're going to do this in about a week. I get there 3 days. In 3 days, they've had maybe half the ceiling of this regular size 2-car garage done. We were scheduled to be done within a week and a half for this job. It wasn't a large job. It was mostly paint and drywall. So we get to another day. They told me they were going to have it finished. They didn't have it finished. So I had to fire them. It was simple as that. You're not hitting the timeline. I need you out of here. I need to get this done. And so that's what I did. I fired them. I hired somebody else that I knew that I could trust, somebody that I've worked with multiple times that can do a good job and turn this around. And they did. Still took longer than it should have, but we were able to get there and we did it. I had a similar situation with another garage. And so in our state, we have code, and I'm sure this is similar all around, but you need to have a certain size drywall in exterior walls and walls that are over garages. So I want to say it's 3/8. Don't quote me on this and come at me if I'm wrong, but 3/8 sheetrock, right? Thick. So ceiling should have been 3/8. It had some cuts in it from where there was a leak. And so we were just patching the drywall. Well, the trade that started to do the drywall used 1/2 inch and tried to tell me that they would skim it out. And that means they were going to put a lot of mud on it and then sand it down. Again, this is a craftsmanship issue. You cannot do that. You cannot skim out 1/4 of an inch to make up for the drywall being too small. I mean, not only is it the wrong drywall to be using in this space, but now you're talking about using mud that will crack and not hold up to even it out. So I said, no, we are going to use the right drywall. You're going to cut that out and you're going to redo it. Well, again, they didn't do it. They didn't, and they lied about using insulation in one of the drywall in one of the bedrooms that are connected to the garage. So not only were they just hiding that fact that they put insulation in and that they were going to use the right size drywall, but they hid this information. And again, it's something that's so simple that you can be like, I messed up and we need to fix this. But instead they hide it and now there's no trust. And the homeowner sees this. Like at this point, you got to save face and you want to honor your trades. You want to have their back. But if they're going to do something like this where they're being shady and they're going to lie to you about it, what do? You can't blindly can't have blind loyalty to somebody that's not going to have your back when it comes down to it. And clearly, if you're going to lie about it, you don't have my back. So again, had to fire them and get somebody else in there. So the job took longer, but the job was done correctly. And then the homeowners are happy because now you're taking the extra step to make sure that you're getting the work done properly and that you recognize when somebody is not doing this job properly. I had a couple extra ones that were just wild. I had a another job. It was a fire job, but the house itself just had smoke damage. So we were just painting. Sometimes it just takes cleaning out the furniture and paint, a lot of paint. So our painters were there. They taped and protected their floors, but they used painter's tape on their hardwood finished floors. And when that happens, sometimes it pulls up the finish, and that's what happened here. So I told my painter that they need to get this fixed. It's up to them if they want to get this right, or I will have to hire somebody to fix it, and then I'm going to have to back charge them, or hold their pay to make sure that we cover the price for that because they didn't cover the floors properly with the proper materials. Well, they tried to fix it. They used high gloss finish instead of like this matte finish that they had on their floor, and it turned out to be a disaster. This whole job ended up being not so great. So we ended up having to pay the homeowner money to have their own person come and refinish these floors because our painters did such a bad job. It actually kind of looked like a checkerboard. It was super weird. But when that comes, you still need to backcharge your trades, and you still need to make sure that you're covering yourself and you're protecting the homeowners when something wrong happens. You got to make it right. So you got to take it on the chin and make it right. And sometimes it's you're not going to make them happy, and it's okay because they can feel how they feel about it. And it was a crappy situation, and it was what it was. And so all you can do is apologize, help them pay for the rest, or pay for the fix, and move on. And that's sometimes a hard lesson, is to make sure that you just take it on the chin and you move on. You can't beat yourself up over every single one, but you learn from it and you take from it, and you need to move on. And to dwell on it, to blame other people, it would be very easy for me to just throw that trade under the bus. But ultimately, it came down to a lot of other things, and we messed up, and that's just what it comes down to. I had another issue with floor where we were on the final clean. We were about to move homeowners back into their house, and we just replaced all their floors on the first floor. And our cleaning crew was coming in, and I had asked them to be, we did drywall, and the drywall company didn't protect the floor super well, so there was a lot of dust in between the divots between them, between each of the cracks of the floors, there's some drywall in there. And so I asked them to take extra time to just make sure that that gets cleaned out, because it looks terrible when you can't clean it very well. And so I get there the next day for the pack back to move in all their furniture, and we're looking at the floors, and they're buckling and delaminating. And it turns out that the cleaners just saturated the floors so badly that it basically gave the floor, they had water damage. So that one was a really, really crappy one to have to tell the homeowners that, hey, sorry, you can't move into your home right now because we messed up your floors and we got to redo them. So again, something that really, it wasn't a great situation, but what else can you do at this point? They're ruined. You can't fix that the way it is. So you have to pull all those up and replace their floors. So they ultimately found another floor. We got them back in within a week from that. But the homeowners were super angry, and, rightfully. But we also, you got to make it right, and you got to do it fast. Like, you can't sit on it. So that day I called them, I let them know, I sent them new selections, and by the end of the day, or maybe the next day, we were demoing and pulling out those floors and already had the new ones on order. So when you can do it quickly and fix the problem fast, so that's where coming in and being really calm and collected during a situation. It would have been easy to just totally freak out and lose my mind, right? But you can't do it in situations like this. You have to take a breather. I didn't call them right away because I needed a moment to have that freak out moment and really find out what happened. I had to call the cleaners and ask them, what on earth did you guys do and use? I've never had an issue with these cleaners before, so I trusted that they can get it done. And they were doing this like late in the night. So it was not even like it was something I can come and check in on, because, I have family of my own. Like, I try to have that boundary of life and work. So, if I could trust a trade, I try to make sure that I put those people in there. So trusting them to clean it. And then we had a mistake. I mean, again, these things happen. It's just what it is. So stay calm, and have your moment to freak out, but get it together and make it fast, and then come up with a solution and address it with the homeowners. It's just the best way to make a crappy situation better by having a solution ready to go, or at least a couple of solutions if you need to make sure that the homeowner has an option to, like, if the homeowner needs to make an option or selection, we can do option 1, we can do option 2, we can do option 3. How do you want me to move forward on this? I'm sorry we messed up. So those are some of those big ones that I've run into. And again, so with that last one though, let me go back. I had that trade, they ended up coming back and demoing the floor and did a lot of that work to kind of just make up for the costs that we were going to have to redo all of that. So they ended up having to eat the cost of the new floors, the demo, the install, and then painting and reinstalling the baseboards. So that was a big cost for them and a big mess for them. And so that brings me to making sure when we are setting up these jobs that you come up with a draw schedule, because draw schedules not only protects you, but it protects them, and it allows you guys to have a little bit of trust all around, right? So draw schedules are really important to have throughout your project. So when you have drywall and paint done, or when you have drywall done and it's ready for paint, we have a walkthrough and we're going to go through and make sure everything looks good before we start paint. If everything looks great, here's your next draw. Then after that, it's paint. Once paint's done and your baseboards are in, you can do like baseboards, paint. So trim, paint, and get it to that point, and then have another walkthrough. And you can do another draw. You can have as many draws as you want. It should just make sense. And I can create some schedules for you. That way, if you want some examples on how to run a job that's pretty straightforward with drywall, and I mean, we can do it from the beginning, framing, insulation, electrical, mechanicals, plumbing, and having a schedule ready to go and having these draw schedules. Because again, if you pay somebody up front and then they mess up, how are you going to recoup that? You're not going to. At least if you have some security of where you pay them for each portion of the job that's done, then you're getting the chance to make sure that if they mess up, you didn't already pay them for that mess up, and then you're going to pay somebody else to fix it. And then you're out of money, and then you're over. So not only would you be over a budget, you're over budget, you're over time. So draw schedules are super important, and this is why. People mess up, it's okay. And we're not going to freak out, we're not going to yell at them, and we're not going to berate them, because was that what you want when you mess up? I don't think so, right? It already feels crummy enough. And another thing I've realized, not everybody handles a mess up really well. So they might kind of like laugh or like blow it off like it's kind of no big deal, but that just might be their coping mechanism. So ultimately it comes down to how you're going to react. You can only control you and how you can react. And if they're not going to meet you halfway, then it's time to move on and say, see you later. I got to get somebody else on here. And it's okay. You can do that. You have that power. It's your job. You're in control. You're in control. You are in control for this. So make sure you have these things talked about prior to the jobs, have draw schedules, have walkthroughs, and this goes as a homeowner, this is a project manager, this is whoever is listening and going through a home renovation. Just stay on top of it. Have schedules, have open communication, and if we mess up, admit to it, fix it, move on, because that's all we can really do in the end, right? So thank you for hanging out with me through this. I'm going to back this up and talk about it again. So that's what I got for you for if you're in the middle of a renovation and things are not going to plan. Thank you for hanging out with me this long. And if you have any tips, tricks, or any questions, leave me a note or hit me up on my DMs, and I'll be sure to get to you. All right. Thanks again. See you next time. Thank you for hanging out today. If you liked what you heard, please make sure you hit subscribe, and I hope to see you again next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.